I'm ready. All right. I think I'm ready. Okay. We're back now from our break and going to finish up our discussion on cooperative learning and move into the guided practice for the remainder of our session. Your book talks about really the functions that the teacher needs to assume in order to set up cooperative learning groups in your classroom, beginning with a clear statement of objectives. And certainly in this case, the objectives for cooperative learning include not only the instructional objectives or the content that you want students to master during the course of these sessions together, but also what the cooperative learning objectives are that need to be accomplished. For example, you may want the students to exhibit appropriate social skills, to demonstrate the assumption of a variety of roles or whatever, but it's important that they learn not only academics, but also the learning system which is in place for them to acquire the information. There's a variety of parameters really that as the teacher you need to set up. We mentioned earlier that groups can range from about 2 students to 6 students. I would certainly encourage you with younger or inexperienced students to begin your cooperative learning groups in very small numbers. The younger children can't function in groups of 5 or 6. I mean, it's just too much. Don't even consider that many children below certainly the 3rd grade level. So if you are a teacher of young children, make sure to keep the numbers of students who are working together very low. If you need to have more students in a group because you may have limited activities or a short amount of time, you can do so. But in the main, keep your groups in the vicinity of probably about 2 to 4. It's also helpful to make sure that specific duties are assigned to individual students so that they know exactly what their role is, exactly what they're supposed to do, and they promote an atmosphere of teamwork with everybody participating and contributing. Usually we talk about cooperative learning groups as being interdependent. In other words, if you're assigning different roles for different members of the group, they're interdependent upon one another for achieving this long-term objective. If you're a 4th grade social studies teacher, for example, you might want students to study the planets, and you might have each one of your students assigned to a group. Maybe, are there 9 planets? Seems like I ought to know this kind of stuff, but I don't. 9 planets? There are 9 planets. So you might have in a 4th grade 27 students. You might have students working in groups of 3. So you might have a researcher and a scribe and a reporter in your group. And in order for them to work productively and accomplish the end, then they end up, everybody has to do they're interdependent upon one another to accomplish their roles. Yes?
You say groups of like or 3s. Is not better to keep it even numbers? Or it's okay just 3?
Oh no, I know what you're thinking about. We say 3's a bad number when we have kids playing together because 2 kids team up on another kid. In cooperative learning, I don't think you have so much that type problem. I'd rather have a group of 3, frankly, than a group of 4. What I find is the more numbers you get, the more you increase your potential for difficulty. First of all, for having somebody who doesn't do anything. One of the real problems in groups is that you have a non-participator. How many of you have been in groups in college? You've been in classes where you were assigned to cooperative learning groups. How did you feel about it? You can tell the truth. Yes.
I only liked it if I could pick who I worked with, because I like to work with my friends rather than just like random groups.
That's what my son did. He liked to pick his own groups too. He always got the smart girls. He said, oh mom, I'm in a group. This is going to be wonderful. I'm with the smart girls. So he was very good at that. I'm sure his criteria were a little different than yours are, but nevertheless, it does help if we can pick our own groups and work with people that we want to work with. Of course, that's not the whole. That doesn't take care of all the problem, though, does it? Because who hated working in groups? I know some of you did. Fess up. Yes.
I guess you can call me antisocial. I would have rather done the work myself than to rely on someone and not know their personality or if they're going to come through or not. But I found that working in groups in community college is far more different than working in groups at the university level. So people are less passionate about their work in community college than they are here at the university level.
You think?
Truly.
Well, oftentimes when I ask this question to a large group of students, what I hear back is, I didn't like working in groups because I did all the work and everybody else got the same grade. 2 people in our group did all the work and all 5 students got the same grade as I did, and they got an A and they didn't do anything. Well, that's because your teacher does not hold you accountable, individual accountability. So in addition to interdependence, you also have to have individual accountability. For many, many years, you know, I was the Quest cluster coordinator. And I had taught the generic teaching class that goes over the 11, now there are 11 competencies that are required of all teachers in Texas. And I had the students in my room volunteer for grade level groups that they thought they wanted to teach. So I put the first grade teachers together in a group, and the second grade teachers together in a group, and the third grade, and the fourth grade, and the fifth grade. And then each group made integrated units. But what we did in our group is that we worked together on an integrated unit. So if there were 4 first grade teachers, each member of that group had to pick a different integrated unit topic and develop the unit objectives and the lessons and the TEKs that were coordinated with the lessons and the unit assessment and all of that. And they worked together to accomplish this, but when they got finished, every member of the group had their own integrated unit that encompassed first grade TEKs. Then they could reproduce their units and exchange them with one another so that everybody ended up with 4 first grade units, or if you were going to be a second grader, you had 4 second grade units, and so on and so forth. And the students worked together to critique each other's work. In other words, when they wrote objectives, they assessed each other's objectives and provided each other feedback, so that by the time I read their objectives, it had had the benefit of being revised by 4 different people. But everybody had to have objectives. Everybody participated in rewriting and refining everybody's objectives and lessons and so on and so forth. But in the end, students turned in their own objectives, their own lessons, and all of the components for their integrated units. So there are ways that teachers can do this that allow kids to work in groups, work together, share their expertise, help one another produce better products, but end up with products for which they can be held individually accountable, because it is very, very frustrating to work in a group and feel that one person does all of the work and another person gets all of the credit. Of course, that's very poor training for later in life too, because what happens in the workplace if you have somebody who isn't doing their share? But the economy isn't quite as user-friendly as the university, and you're fired. So we need to insist that everybody cooperates and contributes and participates, and that we have, in addition to interdependence, we also have individual accountability. once the expectations are explained, the group needs to be very clear about what the goals are and what the rewards are and how they're administered and how they're obtained. They need to be aware of individual accountability and what each person is responsible for, and so on and so forth. And then it becomes incumbent upon the teacher to monitor the children and make sure that they're interacting appropriately, and to the extent they are not, the teacher intervenes to model and demonstrate and teach what the collaborative skills are and what the T-chart is supposed to look like, what's missing from that T-chart. Then the evaluation becomes one in which the individual's products are evaluated, but the group effort is rewarded. And so while evaluation is an ongoing thing, we need to make certain that we're holding students individually accountable for their unique contributions and responsible really for their own learning. So by the time they get to the test, they'll know what the answers are. Cooperative learning has really been touted as a primary way for incorporating students with special needs into individual general ed classrooms. And cooperative learning really is a way for enabling students with special needs to receive the additional attention and assistance from their peers that they may need, while allowing them to make their own unique contributions to the group. And certainly the teachers need to be mindful when we have children with disabilities in cooperative learning groups about what constitutes an appropriate role for a child with a disability, because that child's objectives and skill levels will certainly be different than they may be for the student in the general ed classroom. We also need to prepare the students in the general ed classroom for how to interact appropriately and accept individuals with different learning styles and different learning levels and different learning abilities. And certainly there are a number of ways that kids in the general ed classroom can be made to make these children feel especially useful. Now your book, I told you I put on the WebCT Vista a number of models for cooperative learning, but your book also suggests some simplified versions, and one is just having students discuss a lesson with their neighbors for 3 to 5 minutes to ask questions and clarify what they thought the lesson was about. Establish reading groups in which 2 or 3 students serve as a reader, recorder, checker, whatever the roles are you want them to follow. Have them read materials and answer questions in their groups. Have students meet in small groups to check their own homework assignments and discuss and resolve any questions that they may have. Another thing you may do, you might want to establish a homework hotline for kids in your classroom. Have children volunteer to serve as homework assistants at night over a computer if they have computers available, or over the telephone in case they have a question that somebody needs to ask or needs to obtain help with homework. Have students meet in groups and proofread one another's papers and critique them so that they're working to improve their products for submission. This was sort of the model I followed with my Quest 2 students when they were completing their integrated units. They would write objectives and then each critique each other's objectives to make sure they had all the components. The lesson plans had all the phases of the lesson plans, that the focus or anticipatory set was appropriate and motivational for kids that age. That kind of feedback to help each other refine and improve their products. You always see something differently. When you look at something somebody else has done, you'll see something and catch mistakes that they may not have made. And certainly students in elementary school are capable of doing this for one another as well. Finally, have students work in small groups to prepare for tests. Have them practice and study with one another to prepare for the test questions, this sort of role. Inevitably, if children work together or play together over an extended period of time, there are likely to be conflicts, and there are conflict resolution strategies that are appropriate for conflicts that may arise from cooperative learning groups or conflicts that just arise in a social situation on the playground or whatever. One strategy that your book recommends is to have the two children sit down and agree on what the conflict involved. And then once they're clear on this is what happened and this is, you know, my side and this is his side, then the students are asked to change roles and try to describe what they think the situation looked like from the other child's perspective, and then come up with 2 or 3 alternative solutions that might have been a better choice than arguing over this particular issue, and then finally reach a solution to the problem that's agreeable to everybody. You would be amazing if you take the time to sit down and talk to children once about a conflict that occurred and what other strategies might be. Sometimes you have to wait a few minutes. You have to say, okay, well, why don't you sit down for a while? You're not ready to talk about it yet. Why don't you sit down for a little while and I'll get back to you in a minute. Go do something else. And just let them sit by themselves for a while. Then revisit the issue. Do you think you can talk about this now? Do you think you can? Okay, let's try one more time. This is a skill, but kids can learn skills for negotiating and conflict resolution and this sort of thing. It's that we don't practice these kinds of things in school. We don't view our role as teachers to encompass this, when in fact this is of primary importance if we're going to get them to be independent learners and effective problem solvers in their own adult lives. So I really enjoyed what your book had to say about conflict resolution. I thought it was very effective. Your chapter ends with a discussion about the advantages and really limitations or shortcomings of cooperative learning. Certainly we know that cooperative learning is a primary strategy for inclusive education. It really increases the extent to which children with diverse learning needs can interact productively with one another in learning environments. We know that cooperative learning increases academic achievement in the areas in which tutoring takes place. And we know that cooperative learning really improves student attitudes toward the subject matter area in which they're tutored, and also tutoring between each other often provides these advantages. Unfortunately, there are also some limitations, and there have been a number of studies done specifically on cooperative learning with students with disabilities, and some of them have demonstrated that kids with disabilities learn more, and then other studies have indicated that students with disabilities also may learn as much with other learning models. Certainly with cooperative learning, there is an increased amount of teacher preparation time that is involved. Transition times are sometimes time-consuming and lengthy and certainly need to be highly organized. It may extend the time you need to allocate for lessons, and certainly there may be anxieties on the part of the students and the teachers both toward working together in these settings. I mean, like you said a minute ago, I'm antisocial. It's just easier not to have the anxiety of working with or depending on somebody else. Certainly you will have children in your room who may be dominant or bossy. They may, you know, your group member, I often wondered if those kids, nobody ever stood up and said, I didn't do any of the work in my group, but I got the same grade. But I wonder if someone did stand up and say that, they would say, oh, that girl in my group was so bossy. Would you think she'd say that about you? I don't know. But in any event, you notice with little children that sometimes one student may be a know-it-all or may be bossy or may dominate or monopolize. Assignments may not always be at the appropriate level for all students, and it may sometimes be difficult to negotiate appropriate objectives for children who are less competent achievers. And certainly in cooperative learning models, you'll have higher levels of noise in your room. That doesn't really bother me in particular. I don't care if the noise level's a little bit higher, as long as the noise is the result of purposeful learning. That's what you need to focus on as a teacher, whether or not the noise you're hearing is the result of kids being off task, or possibly whether they are on task and excited and enthusiastic about what they're doing, in which case, unless it's disrupting somebody else in the school, I don't think there's a particular problem. But certainly you have to shift your thinking. If you're someone who wants a classroom as quiet enough to hear a pin drop, cooperative learning is probably not going to have that end result. In any event, we'll pause right now for a work session, and I'll let Kim go over the guided practice with you. Yes, can I just...
I have you in, hi everyone, first of all. I have you in groups of 2 and 3 today. I have 6 groups, and we are going to watch a movie about a young lady named Jackie who is in an inclusion program, and she's included in a 3rd grade general education classroom. I'm going to set some purposes. You know how when you have a reading lesson you set purposes for reading? I'm going to set a few purposes for watching today. First of all, I'd like you to pay special attention to a technique they use in the video called the pit crew technique. And then each group is going to answer a question about that pit crew technique. So we get a real good idea about how that technique is used, the benefits of that technique, and then specific things we actually see happening in the video. Your assignment also has to do with this technique. I had never heard of this technique before Dr. Goodman introduced it to me, and I saw it in the video. I think it's an excellent technique for making sure your students with disabilities are included in your classroom. It's a real good way to do it. So we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and tell each group what question they'll have, so let you focus in on that part of the video, and again, set a purpose for watching. While you're watching, you might want to take a few notes. This group over here will have question 1, what is the pit crew technique and how is it implemented? I want that kind of a general, not necessarily for Jackie, but in general, what is the pit crew technique and how is it implemented? These 3 ladies right here will have question 2, what specific objectives were the focus of the pit crew in this video? What specific objectives were they trying to accomplish with Jackie? Behind them, the 2 ladies, question 3, how were the decisions made in the pit crew carried out in the classroom? And what specific adaptations were made as a result of having that pit crew meeting? Okay, and the 3 in the back here, question 4, evaluate the pit crew as an effective intervention technique for Jackie in that general education classroom setting. Do you think it worked? Do you think they could have done something better? What would you change, if anything? 2 ladies and the young man right here, question 5, how did the pit crew aid in Jackie's social development? Some specific things that happened in the video that you saw that are going to serve her well in her social development in that 3rd grade general education classroom. And the 2 ladies in the back, question 6, what benefits did the pit crew technique have for the members of the pit crew team? And by the pit crew team, I mean the general education students that were on that pit crew in the video. Okay? Any questions about what you're going to focus in on while we're watching? I think you'll enjoy this. It's an enjoyable video. You can go ahead.
Jackie's a child of multi-needs. She's developmentally delayed with some mild cerebral palsy. We don't like to think of her in those terms, though. We just like to think of her as Jackie. We met her social goals quite rapidly and immediately started to think about meeting her academic needs.
Is that what you said came next? What comes next?
To go shop.
Right, but what's he doing in that picture? What's he doing? Can you look at it? What's he doing in that picture?
In the shop.
He's taking a shower, but what's he doing?
Wash the tummy.
He's washing his tummy.
She's very sensitive to being with her peers and wants very much to be a regular 3rd grader. And that is a challenge at times because sometimes academically there's activities we need to run in a parallel manner, and she's not always willing to do that. When we came into this project, the first thing we decided as a team was that it was a we proposition, but it wasn't going to be one person alone that was capable of making that happen. We were all capable, and we all had to come to the point where we were willing to risk and look outside of our defined roles as the special educator, the OTPT, the speech person. We had to be willing to risk our preconceived notions of what our role should be and follow that for the betterment of the team.
What we read about Jackie and the problems that she had had in other settings and her unhappiness with school, and the fact that her parents had chosen to keep her at home to educate her rather than to put her in a placement where she was so unhappy, we decided that we would try this, but it was with, wow, is this really going to work? What we got was so different than what we expected. Within just a couple days, Jackie was no longer unhappy with school. She looked forward to coming. She made herself a regular part of that 2nd grade classroom. Kids adapted very well. And in 6 weeks' time, she made such incredible gains that we realized that we couldn't go back. There wasn't any way that we could put Jackie back in a self-contained class. And in fact, if it was good for her, then wasn't it that good for all of the other kids as well? And it was her story that really made us say, we need to look at other kids as well and bring everybody back.
Well, with Jackie, she went from school to school, to program from the age of 3. And so, therefore, there wasn't a stability there that we wanted. So now Jackie goes down to the neighborhood bus stop and is allowed to be with her friends and her little sister, Renee. She always wondered what it would be like to ride on that big bus. So when she came into the inclusion program, they wanted to send her a small minibus, and she didn't want any part of that. She wanted to be on the big bus like everybody else.
She wants to be with her peers. Some of the bus rides would literally take her an hour and a half to 2 hours a day one way, and then the same time back. Very long days. But I think most of all, she wanted to be part of her peers. She wanted to be part of the kids around here.
Well, I feel that right now you have to integrate Jackie. I think if we waited down the road, it's too late. So I think for Jackie to be truly integrated in this society, she's going to have to be integrated right now and to be able to get along with her peers and for her peers to get along with her. I think the success will come with time.
Don't sit with me. Get back in your seat. Get back to your seat. Yeah. Sit down. Sit down.
She began to walk at age 5, so she's made dramatic strides physically since then.
And we know she's very sensitive because when Renee, our youngest one, walked, she walked before Jackie. And so we found Jackie a half a block away on her scooter. And we knew that she was upset because Renee had done something before she could even do it.
She practices things that she can't do over and over and over again. And I think in that way she can learn to compensate. I guess one of the memories that we have is her trying to walk upstairs without holding on to the railings. And she was out in front on the porch, and she was practicing and practicing and practicing, going up and down. And then she fell and hurt herself, but she had the gumption to get up and to do it one more time. She's a go-getter, and she keeps on practicing without us telling her. It's just in her.
At the beginning of the year, we kind of thought that, you know, she had disabilities and that, like, we shouldn't really play with her because we didn't want to be, like, laughed at because we were playing with her. And now we've gotten used to, like, playing with her, and now kids don't laugh. They think that, oh, like, that we're being nice to her and that we're being, like, better than average kids and being real nice, instead of just, like, not playing with them and not being real nice. And so I think that, like, her being in our classes has really been a good thing for the whole class.
The most important way to make it work is if we can get kids helping other kids. We have established what we call our pit crews, and those pit crews actually meet periodically over lunch, and they talk about what are strategies, what are things that these children can do in the classroom, and how can we adapt what's going on in the regular classroom to make it a place for everybody.
And you've been with her all year, and you've seen a lot. Some of you were in our other pit crew and seen what good things she can do and what things are kind of difficult for her to do.
I think she could learn probably California and Hawaii if we're doing research on them, and so, like, probably everybody's going to get that. And so I think she could probably learn those, and then the state that she picks. Don't your grandparents live in Ohio? Well, she could do Ohio. You could, like, tell, like, a color of, like a state, and then she could tell you the color. In a week or so, let her try to identify them and see what she knows and what she doesn't know.
What's some others that would be easy for her to maybe identify?
Alaska.
Texas, that's a good one.
Florida.
Illinois, thank you.
Florida. Washington and Maine.
Can she color the mountains?
Yeah.
Okay, those 3 things we're set on.
She feels encouraged, and she's learning more language, how to talk clearly and stuff. and she's just like learning off of us. She's learning off of us and how to do things, and like how we always write our names on her paper, and so she always tries to write her name on her paper, and she's got like the J and the A and the K, or J and the A down, and the I, and she just needs to work on the K and the E. So she's coming along pretty well.
I'm convinced that kids really belong together. That's what our world's about. That kids are on the playground together, they're in the lunchroom together, they need to be in the classroom together too.
I think he took Allison's marker. I think he did. Yes. Allison, find where number 2 is. Pick it out. You can pick this one out. No. Here, come on. Right here. Right here, Jackie. Right here. Right there by Lake Michigan. Pick it out. No, not Lake Michigan. Pick it Yes. Okay, you got it. Who lives there? Where do we live? Where do we live? What state do you live in? Yeah, but what state? No. No. We live in Wheaton, but Illinois. Yes. And what number? Okay. What's our capital? You know this one. Good.
For some time we've been worried about kids that have needs at the top, kids that are maybe gifted, and we attend to their needs, and now we're looking at kids really at the other end of the scale who have some very special learning needs in other areas. So I think it's broadened our perspective. We no longer teach to the middle of a classroom. We really have to extend ourselves both directions to make that work.
What ocean is the Hawaii in? What ocean? Right. Okay, Jackie, what state do you want to do? One that somebody lives in. Who lives there? Grandpa Fox. What state is that? Whoa, louder. What was it? Ohio, great. Can you come up and point to that? I'm going to give you a stick. Come here. Let's point to Ohio, like everybody else is, so we can find it. Use our pointer. Remember when you used this before? In Ohio, right. Now let me show you something first. This is Illinois. Close, close. That's Wisconsin. See that O right there? That's Ohio. Okay? Is that okay? You do that state? Good for you.
I stayed there.
You stayed there. Good. You can put that in your report. That would be perfect. Okay.
For us as a school is it's made us really live out what we believe to be our mission. And our mission, which we established some time ago, was that we would be a place where we would prepare kids for tomorrow, and we would help kids to anticipate what was going to happen tomorrow, and that this school would be a place to get ready for life. And in doing that, we found out that life is going to involve people with different kinds of differences, people with special needs. So what we think we're doing is preparing kids at a very young age to accept other people that might look differently, that learn differently, that walk differently, that talk differently, and that's okay.
It's amazing what we've learned in the last 15 years. It's thrilling to see children that you thought would never be able to contribute to society now contributing in very meaningful ways in activities that someone has to do anyway. And it's wonderful for me to go to the grocery store or to McDonald's or other places where we see disabled people working and contributing, where I know, I've been in this business long enough that I know that we used to spend tax dollars day and night to support those people. And now they support themselves and indeed contribute to society, are paying taxes, and I think that's growth. That's real growth.
Okay, I'll have to talk to that last guy about people first language, I guess, huh? Okay, let's go ahead and talk about that pit crew technique that we saw them using with Jackie. And I think that the more we talk about it, the more you'll see what a good idea it might be to use in your own classrooms, okay? How about our group number 1? Make sure you have someone you know who's going to do the talking with the microphone so everybody will be able to share.
Okay, we're going to
Okay, your question is, what is the pit crew technique and how is it implemented? Not necessarily specifically what they did with Jackie, but kind of an overall view of what that technique is.
Okay, what they did, they tried to include her in the regular classroom. They treat her like a regular kid. And they also prepare the regular students to interact with the kid that is disabled, but do not treat her like different. They were like treating her the same. Like when she gave it the answer, the other kid give me a 5. It's like that's what you will do to improve somebody else. To give. Okay, what else? Go ahead.
Can you tell me more about that pit crew technique specifically, when they sat in the circle and talked during lunchtime and talked?
They had the kids suggest what they thought she could do and give ideas of what they thought she was able to do, and so they were involved in helping her. And so I guess they felt closer to her that way.
It was somewhat teacher directed about how they could help. Lee, did you want to add something to that?
Not only were the kids planning what she could do, I think they were involved in her success. And she was becoming a positive contributor to the group. It was putting, even though they were doing the planning, she was becoming an actual part of the group along with them.
I like that term you used, positive contributor. So not only were they finding ways where she could master the same academic objectives, but also feel a part of the group and be, like you say, a positive contributor. Very good. Okay, how about this group that had question 2? What specific objectives were the pit crew talking about for her?
We felt that a specific objective was to get Jackie to recognize and memorize her states, using color code or association with relatives that live in those states, to help her recognize that and be able to participate in the classroom activities.
Anything else? Okay. Our third group, question 3. How were the decisions made in the pit crew carried over to the classroom work, and what specific adaptations did you see them making?
Well, during the classroom work, the students were asking Jackie questions that would help her get to the right answer. They weren't just pointing and saying, here, this is this, or here, this is that. They'd ask her questions that lead her to say, okay, this one's Florida, and this one's blue or green or whatnot. And what they did was that they chose, like, for example, they chose a state her grandfather lived in, so that would be more familiar to her, so she'd be able to identify it. And they used the corner states because they're more easy to identify rather than all the states in the middle.
Anything you want to add to that? She's got a scratchy throat like I do. Okay. How about our group in the back there for question 4?
Let
me repeat question 4. It was to evaluate the pit crew as an effective intervention technique for Jackie in that general education setting.
Well, it was effective because, well, first of all, Jackie felt like, she wanted to go to school, and she wanted to be like everyone else. She rode the bus to school. She got along with her peers. She wanted to practice her routines and try and get to do her subjects right and stuff. They incorporated the other children to figure out problem solving, to see what they could do to help Jackie out, and how to make her feel welcomed, accepted, and how they could help Jackie feel like just another student, part of the classroom. They made the class as a community and made Jackie part of their community.
So how about one of the other 2 members of your group? Do you feel that was an effective intervention technique for her? Will you want to comment on that for us?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Would you like to expand on that anyway? Okay. Okay, very good. Okay, our question 5 group right here. Okay. How did the pit crew aid in Jackie's social development, since that was kind of our focus of our class today?
Jackie was happier to be at school. She had regular attendance. She expressed a desire to be around her peers more. She had more effective communication, and she showed more confidence when she was up by the map and she high-fived the students, and just better peer interaction.
Something anyone would like to add?
I guess also she felt more a part of a group when they were all trying to accomplish her getting a specific goal. So she felt like she was part of the team and they had to actually talk to each other. So she just got over the fact that, you know, she had to talk and interact with the people. So it just became a normal thing just to talk.
Very good. How about our young lady in the middle? Do you feel like maybe this will carry over into other contexts or other environments in the school? With other students?
I think they could use it with other students and try the same technique. And I think that that class, those kids will be more likely to interact with learning disabled children versus if they hadn't been in class with Jackie.
And that kind of carries us to our last question about what benefits did the pit crew technique have for other members of that pit crew team, the members that were the general education students?
Can you hear me? Okay. The main benefit that I saw from the video is that the general education students were able to understand that some children are different, and I saw positive interaction and cooperation, and she was accepted as any other member from the class, and the students were very supportive with her. And she was pretty good adapted to the classroom environment.
Do you have something to add?
I also thought that it benefited the members of the pit group because they were able to strategize and brainstorm and develop those kinds of skills in order to, you know, help other children as well as themselves.
I think it's a great observation. So they not only benefited from helping Jackie, but they benefited in themselves and practiced how to strategize and ways of learning and ways to adapt the instructions so they can learn it more effectively. Excellent. Okay. Did anyone see any drawbacks for this intervention?
Lots more lesson planning. A lot more. You just have to basically create another lesson plan just for her and the whole group to come up with ways to help her.
That's a good point, that you see more work for the teacher otherwise. Do you think that Jackie may be the only student in that classroom that's going to need some adaptations to learning all the states? I can guarantee you she won't be. I've been in third, fourth grade classrooms. There are other students that are going to need these adaptations also. So I feel like any adaptations, the extra time that teacher has to take to make those adaptations for Jackie, to help the students help her, are going to be useful for other students also. So I see your point though. It is a little extra time to make sure that student is included in your classroom. But in the way the teacher does it with the pit crew, they're having lunch anyway. So you spend one lunch doing that instead of eating with the other teachers in the teacher's lounge. That's time that you can have with your students in doing something useful and something that's beneficial to a student in the classroom, and getting that feeling of community into the classroom. One thing we didn't talk about that obviously was not the whole class in the pit crew. How do you think that teacher chose those? It looked like maybe 6 or 7 students. Any ideas how she might have chosen those particular students for Jackie's pit crew? What kind of characteristics would you look for in a student to be in the pit crew for another student with disabilities?
Like she was saying, that it doesn't have to be academically or high achievers. I feel that the quality can be that they care for others, that it should be the main quality. They care for others, so the student really cared about her, so that's why it should be one quality.
I think it might be a good idea, just seeing this technique for the first time, to kind of change out the kids for pit crews during the year and have different groups of kids all through the year, so maybe everybody gets to do it at least once if they would like to do it. That's a good idea, because I think all students really have something to contribute to a technique like this. Okay? Who thinks they might use this in their classroom if they have a student with disabilities included in their general education class? Just raise your hand if you think you might try it. Excellent. I'm glad. I'm glad. Okay, your assignment has to do with this pit crew technique, this pit crew model, and what you've seen here today and what you saw in the video will help you. You can also view the video again in its entirety because there is a student before Jackie on the video. I'm trying to remember her name right now, I can't. And there's a student after. There's a preschool student before Jackie with some very good ideas on how to include preschool students in the preschool classroom. And then there's a part of the video is a student after Jackie who is an older student, a high school student, and what they have done with her as far as including her in the general education setting. Okay, are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Did Jackie know that she had a pit crew?
I think, well, what do you think? She was there. What do you think that's a very good question. What do you think her perspective was of what was going on?
I'm not sure what her perspective is, but I was going to ask the question that in the video they seem to speak as if she wasn't in the room. So I don't know if she's able to recognize that. I don't have enough background on Jackie to be able to say that she does.
And that bothered me the first time I watched this. I thought, well, gosh, they're talking about her like she's not even sitting there. It's kind of rude. But she seemed to be listening and taking in what they were saying. And whether it bothered her or not, I guess you'd have to know Jackie better and talk to her. And that's an issue that would come up, that it might bother another student, that student is sitting there and everyone's kind of talking about him or her. So that would be an issue you may have to address if you choose to use this technique. But that was a good question. But she was there, so she knew what was going on. Dr. Goodman?
As the teacher, you can also involve her so well. You know, how do you feel about that? Bring her into it. If you feel that she's sort of being treated like an object rather than a person, draw her into it and ask her, or tell the child. Now that's a good suggestion. Why don't you ask Jackie how she would feel about doing Ohio? Is that a state that you think you could master? Something of that nature. So you feel like you're really bringing her into it.
Absolutely. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you all. Good luck on your assignment.